On Friday, November 11, 2022, at approximately 4:15 p.m., an individual came to the Montego Bay police station and handed over to us a plastic bag containing a Smith & Wesson firearm and 40.38 live rounds. This weapon was handed over under the gun amnesty that is currently in place. The St. James Police were happy for this gesture, and we continue to encourage members of the public to hand over any illegal weapon that they may come in contact with, whether it is that it was found, whether it is that they had it in their possession.
We cannot sit by and do nothing. We wish the opposition would see this, because our Constitution requires that they participate. We would really hope that they support it. But let it not be said that the government did not act, and act justly, judiciously, with sufficient care for the people. To change the perspective of national security. Citizens tend to focus on crime and miss the bigger picture of national security. Now, when we're talking about national security, it's not just about tackling the criminal. It's about building up, for example, our domain control, how we control our borders. The government has made massive investments in putting new offshore patrol vessels in our sea. You know, I've never heard, growing up, of the JDF being able to very quickly respond and repatriate fishermen. It may have happened, but it's not something that was prominent. In today's Jamaica, we have the capacity to deploy to protect our waters, not extensively, but enough, and we're building that out. We have invested heavily in building up our intelligence and communications. But we have also invested significantly in increasing above the rate of attrition in our security forces. So for the first time in a long time, our security forces numbers are growing. The JDF numbers have grown significantly through the Jamaica National Service Corps program. And the Commissioner of Police has implemented a new strategy to grow the force. When I speak to the opposition parliamentarians who express reservations, reluctance on the use of the SOEs, they point to more police. We need more police on the ground. We need more boots on the ground to do the static and dynamic operation to deter the criminals. But where are they going to come from? The process of training is not an overnight process. And then, yes, we could, within a year or two, have significant increases in the number of policemen. But the impact, which goes to the question that you asked, General, which is so important, it takes about 5 years for someone to garner the skills to become a detective. And when it is that you have sometimes 1,500 murders to deal with a larger number of shootings and other crimes, if you look at the number of detectives in the force relative to the caseload that they carry, the answer cannot always be, we need to increase the number of detectives. What the Commissioner is saying, we need to implement strategies to reduce the number of cases. And that's what we have been arguing. We have been saying this over and over again. The level of crime in our country is over and above the capacity of our regular law enforcement. It is not a situation that is unique to Jamaica. Many island states have not looked at national security in the sophisticated way that they needed to over the last 30 years to make the investments in intelligence gathering, communications, transportation, border control, investment in the training of our security forces, and in the training of the officers of the security forces. Now we are doing that. But it takes time to build the capacity. What do we do in the interim? In the interim, it is clear that we have an emergency. Even war-torn countries have a murder rate less than Jamaica. As a people, we have to recognize that the murder rate that we have, the level of violence that we have, the level of public disorder that we have, the level of trying to challenge the state, it is unusual, it is abnormal, and it is destructive. But there is another dimension to this. The criminal networks and the criminal organizations are doing their best to incorporate legitimate persons, legitimate public authority into their criminal actions. In other words, they are trying to corrupt the state. And many of them are using tactics to drive fear in the public. Drive fear in the public and drive fear in communities. Now, when we start to see criminal organizations operating in that way, then they are beginning to transition out of being criminal operatives to trying to influence government policy and outcome. We have seen states where this has reached the point where either the state is on the brink of collapse or they have had to take extreme actions. We are trying to avoid that at all costs. I don't have to say which state. You just look around the region. You can see one state on the brink of collapse and one state that has taken extreme action, which has brought their murder rates down by over 60%. Gangs are morphing. They are trying to influence legitimate civil and public organizations. They are corrupting the state. We cannot sit by and do nothing. We wish the opposition would see this because our Constitution requires that they participate. We would really hope that they support it. But let it not be said that the government did not act, and act justly, judiciously, with sufficient care for the people.